All right. This is 3.8 Unit 3 summary. It says in this chapter, you learned about conditionals, and we learned a lot about conditionals. If you knew what conditionals were, which many of you did, right, hopefully this helped solidify your understanding of conditionals. So conditionals are used to execute code when a Boolean expression is true or false. Two values, yes or no, true or false, on or off, 0 or 1, 1 or 0. A Boolean expression is one that is either true or false, like x is greater than 0. Okay, some different concepts that we talked about. The block of statements. It says one or more statements enclosed in an open curly brace and a closing curly brace. It's called a block. That's why in our ifs, we typically wrote them with curly braces. Okay, Boolean expression. It says a mathematical or logical expression that is either true or false. If a condition is true, then it continues inside of that condition. If it's false, then it skips that, doesn't execute that line, and moves on. A compound Boolean expression was what we've been using over the past few lessons, where we have and or. The and uses the double ampersand, and or uses those lines that are straight up and down. I refer to them as pipes, right? When I was first seeing that symbol for the first time, I guess it was in college. I was like, I didn't even know that was on my keyboard. I didn't take any programming classes when I was in high school, so my high school didn't offer that. We had keyboarding 1 and keyboarding 2. If you like to learn how to type, then you got to type twice. When I got to college before I actually started programming, you guys get a little bit of a head start. It says, we also talked about conditionals. Those conditions only execute if the Boolean value is true. We had a lesson on De Morgan's laws and rules that show you how to distribute a negation on a complex conditional. It's sort of like the distributive property in math. Okay, we're finding the opposite of things. The logical and, as well as the logical or. Negation, which turns a true statement false and a false statement true by putting a exclamation point outside of it. Short circuit evaluation is what we were using as well in order to short circuit out of a condition and realize that this is either true or this is either false. And to realize that, hey, in an and, if the first compound expression, if the first expression is false and it's saying and, we can short circuit out of there. In an or, if the first one is true, if the first expression is true, we can short circuit out of there and realize that in that case it's true. And we use that pretty frequently there towards the end. It says if Boolean expression, the if, as well as the else and the else if. We talked about each of these. If is used to start the conditional. We have else, which is anything else. At the very end, if you're using ifs and else ifs, at the very end, you can include an else to catch anything else. All right. It says drag the definition from left to right and drop it on the correct concept. Okay, so an expression that is either true or false, that's a Boolean expression. Used to execute code only when a Boolean condition is true. And then we have joins two conditions, and it will only be true if both of the conditions are true. Then we have an expression with two or more expressions joined together with logical ands, ors. So used to execute code only when a Boolean condition is true. That would be a conditional. It says joins two conditions and it will only be true if both the conditions are true. That would be a compound Boolean expression. And an expression with two or more expressions joined together with logical ands or ors. Whoops, logical and. and there. I mixed up those originally there. So compound Boolean expression, an expression with two or more expressions joined together with logical ands and ors, and logical and joined to two conditions. It will only be true if both are true. All right, go ahead and run it. And it says correct. Okay, a few more. It says one or more statements enclosed in an open curly brace and a closed curly brace used to distribute a negation on a compound Boolean expression. Used to execute code when at least one of the two conditions is true, and used to start a conditional and execute code if a condition is true. Okay, so one or more statements enclosed in an open and close. Those would be blocks of statement. Used to distribute a negation. That would be De Morgan's laws. Used to execute code when at least one or two conditions is true. Be a logical or. And used to start a conditional would be if. All right, that's what it looks like. Let's go ahead and check it. And it's true. All right, some common mistakes. The assignment operator, this one equal sign is not the same thing as a double equals. This is the assignment operator. This compares actually if the values are the same. Okay, so if, sorry, it says remember that equals is used to assign values and the double equals is used to test whether or not they're true. Ifs always use the double equals. We also learned the dot equals. Putting a semicolon at the end of if, make sure we don't do that. Okay, it's a common mistake. Remember that the if statements end after that or use curly braces. Using two ifs, one after the other instead of an if else, that's a common mistake. We looked at the grade book example for that, where someone actually got like a 90 and we gave them a D because of the code that we wrote. We should have written else if instead of just a bunch of ifs. Not understanding that or is inclusive or, where one or both conditions must be true. That's a common mistake. Trouble understanding and applying negation, the distribution of De Morgan's laws. We talked about that in 3.6, I believe. If you need some extra time with that, you can go back to that. And then also not understanding short circuit evaluation. It says you've attempted 3 of 3 activities on this page, completed, well done. And that's 3.8, Unit 3 summary.